Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you.
Awesome. Hey, I'm finishing something up, so if you would, grace me with just a few more minutes and I'll be right back with you. Need about 2 minutes.
Okie dokie. Nope.
All right. As we are going through this training, if you do have questions, there's not that many of you, so if you want to unmute yourself and just ask the question, go ahead and do that. I think we've got 8 people on today that are agents, so if you need a question, again, just unmute yourself and ask it. Other than that, then let's get started. All right, for the purposes of today's training, I'm using this property, Tremonto Hill. It's one that I had used before, and so I'm just going to use the same concept of coming up with pricing for this property. This property actually expired back in December, but we're going to go through the pricing on this anyway. So the first thing that I want to go through is I want to talk about the concept that we're going to use, which kind of deals with this slide right here. Which is the fact that homes will sell within a price range in any given market. So when we look at this, and you can use this graph or you can use one that you make up, what this line here is indicating is the overall market, right? And the one way to think about this overall market is this line right here dictates the things that the owner can't control and that you and I as the agent can't control. Right? So this might indicate the national economy, the local economy. It might indicate interest rates. It could be supply and demand. Those are all things that will affect the overall market, but there's things that you and I as an agent or the owner can't control. But what we can control as agents and as the owner, right, as a team, is where the house sells at any given time. So depending on if the market's on a high end or if the market's in a lull or somewhere in between, that house is going to sell within a specific price range based on the overall market. Now, does anybody have any questions about that aspect of it? Okay, because I think it's important that we as agents explain this to the seller as we're going through it so that they understand, you know, the market that was maybe 3 years ago might have been here. Now we're here. That would be a good thing because the market has been going up. However, markets go up and go down. So we might be at the low end of the market and they might be wondering why we're giving them a certain price or houses are selling at a certain price when they're thinking it should be selling up here. So this is a good visual for sellers to look at and get an understanding. And again, right now we're not debating, we're not talking about price. We just want them to understand the concept that prices do sell in a price range given upon the market, okay? So I've put this into a simple dialogue here. Hopefully y'all can see this screen now, right?
Yes.
All right. And this is just a dialogue that I've learned from other people, and I'm putting stuff in here that I've heard from David Scott and from Molly. And what this diagram is called, it's called the principle of price elasticity. And that just talks about that prices are flexible depending on certain things, okay? So this is how this dialogue would work. And again, it's a dialogue, you guys can change it, okay? Now, so the way that I would explain it, I'm just gonna try and say it how I would to a seller. In any market, a home will sell within a certain price range.
Okay.
Some homes will sell, and I'll have the diagram open. Some houses will sell towards the high end of the range, and some will sell towards the low end of the range. But again, in any market, it's going to sell within a certain range given on the overall market. Now, where that home sells within this range is going to be determined by these factors, okay? It's going to be determined by your home's condition, features, and amenities as compared to recently sold homes, right? So that's one aspect. Where it's going to sell in that range also is going to be determined by your home's condition, features, and amenities as compared to homes currently on the market.
So let me gather real quick. What are the specific items? So previous water damage.
Say it again. Are you talking to me, Kim?
Sorry.
All right, I got you. We're talking about water damage. I'm like, I'm not there yet. So again, your home's condition, features, and amenities as compared to recently sold homes. So that's one of the things that we're going to go through with the seller, right? Recently solds. And also those that are currently on the market. So we're going to go through those homes that are currently on the market, because not only, you know, the appraiser is going to use the recently sold homes, but the market is going to determine where we enter the market, at what price we enter the market. So we want to go through both of those. And then the next thing is how your home is prepared before introducing to the market, and then how your home is presented to the market. Now, we talked about things we can control and things we can't control. And there may be other things that you want to talk about here. I'm just going to go through these basic 4 things today, or actually 2 of these things today. We're going to talk about the other 2 tomorrow. But out of these things right here, let me ask you guys a question. What is it out of these that the seller can control? All right, so I'm gonna ask somebody a question. So let me start off with Lori. Let me ask you this question, Lori. Out of those 4 things there, what are those things that the seller can control, or that the seller is going to be
Can or cannot?
that the seller is going to be responsible for?
Well, the condition of the home.
Right. So how it compares. So this one right here, how the home is prepared before introducing to the market, that is something that the seller is going to be able to control. That could change the condition and how it reflects and compares to solds and recently on the market. So when we talk about how the home preparing the home to go to market, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay. Now, the thing that you as the agent can control is how the home is presented to the market, right? So we're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to tell them the things that should be done, or go through them, things that they can do to get the house ready for market. But that's mainly going to be the responsibility of the seller, because the seller is the one that's going to paint their house, or the one that's going to get the landscaping ready, right? Or the one that's going to do some upgrades if they want the higher end of the market. What we control is how we present that prepared home to the market. So that's the marketing aspect of it. So when we're presenting this to the seller, we want them to understand, again, it sells in a price range. That price range is going to be determined how their home compares to the market, and how their home is prepared before we introduce it to the market. And then once we introduce it, how is it that we are going to market that home to put it in the best light? So that's part of the mindset. So let me ask you guys on this aspect right here, do you have any questions about that? Okay. So what we're going to go through today is these first 2, right? And so how we present this to them is one thing. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to compare their home to other homes that sold recently, and we're going to compare their home to homes that are currently on the market. And the idea here, if we come back up here, is we know there's a range here. We've already told them it's going to sell in the range. So if there's houses that are in better condition and updated than theirs that is selling towards the higher end of the market, we want them to see that, because they're going to want to price it somewhere in here. A lot of sellers, when you first talk to them, they think their house is really in good shape and really good, and it should sell for top dollar. But we want to compare it to other homes. And once they see if there's other homes that are in better condition than theirs, they're going to start getting more realistic about where to price. Or they're going to say, well, I do want top dollar, so I better do a good job of preparing my home to go to the market. Because I was thinking, my house, I painted it 2 years ago. That's okay. The carpet looks pretty good, but my house is pretty clean. I'm ready to go to market. Well, after we go through and show them what houses have sold for and what other sellers have done to get their house ready, we're hoping that they're going to rethink that and want to put some effort into getting their house ready to go to market. And it's part of our job to present that to them and to guide them down that path. Okay. So how do we determine which properties we're going to use? Well, the main thing that we're going to use is square footage to determine what are the comparables that we're going to be comparing to, right? So I kind of changed the way that I present this a little bit. And I like the plus or minus 10% rule. We've used, there's houses sell in the high part of the range, the mid part of the range, and the low part of the range. And that is still true. And that's what we're covering here with the high part of the range, the mid part of the range, and the low part of the range. The best comparables are typically going to be plus or minus 10%. Now, that can change depending on the number of comparables. I might need to expand that a little bit to grab some more comparables. I might need to lower that a little bit if there are a lot of comparables. But the square footage is going to be the main way in which we do this. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find within that neighborhood the homes of the same style, which would typically be 1 or 2 story homes, right? Now, if you're in a neighborhood that has different builders, you're going to have to dig in a little bit deeper and potentially find the same builder. Because even though the builders within a neighborhood are going to be pretty close to one another, sometimes there are builders that are a lot better or have a lot better reputation than other builders. So you might need to dig in a little bit there, okay?
I had that happen in Rogers Ranch. It was Highlands, Sitterly, and then Centex.
Uh-huh. Oh, big difference there.
Yeah.
And so just keep that in mind, right? We want homes of the same style. You might need to do builder, and there might be some other things, right? So just keep that in mind. And that's only going to happen through experience and through you doing research to be able to understand that. For our purposes today, we're just going to keep the same style as one or 2 story, because in Toronto Hill, they're all pretty much the same. They're homogeneous pretty much. Now, if our subject property is 1,800 square feet, if we use the 10% rule, 1,800 square feet times 10% is 180 square feet. So we take the 1,800, subtract 180, the 1,800 and add 180. And so our range would be between 1,620 and 1,980. Now we might need to, again, expand that a little bit or decrease that a little bit depending on if we're getting enough comparables. Now, typically when we do comparables, we want to go back no more than 6 months. So if we go back 6 months and there's a lot of comparables, we might be able to squeeze it down a little bit to lessen the time back. And just as a side note here, with what's going on in the market right now, we might want to look closer at the last 3 months rather than the last 6 months. So just keep that in mind. And as you're researching this, you might need to spend a little bit more time right now in this market because a little bit of volatility is going on. So we're going to want to take a look at that. Okay. So right now, just using this as an example, 1,800 square feet, our initial range is 1,620 to 1,980 square feet. And using the subject property Toronto Hill, I believe it was at 1,800 square feet. That's why I did this. This is what we're going to go off of. Right. So before we start going into comparables, let's go ahead and take a look at Toronto Hill. So this is Toronto Hill right here, 1,800 square feet. Let's see here, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, standard Pacific homes, built back in 2006, right? So that's everything. If you're going to market and you don't have this, you can come to the MLS and do the tax report, and you can get that information from the tax report. Here it's showing 1,790 square feet. So again, I have to say this as a side note. If the county, and this is where most of the time we get our square footages from the county, 1,790. If it's listed at 1,800, what am I going to need if I'm going to put this in the MLS at 1,800 square feet? I'm going to need some additional information. What am I going to need? Let me ask Kim, Hussein, or Lori. One of y'all let me know.
I would go and check the actual Bear County records.
Yeah, so the Bear County was at 1,790, right? This went in at 1,800. So if you're going to put it in at 1,800, what would you need to justify the 1,800?
Sometimes they may have the builder floor plan
Okay, that's good.
that you can use. And then sometimes they may have an appraisal from when they bought it.
Yeah, or an appraisal. So the key point there is I need the documentation that is going to support that number, right? So in this case, maybe it was the builder's floor plan that was 1,800. Me as the listing agent, I need to make sure I have that. Because if it ever comes down to it, that somebody complains or lawsuit gets involved, I need to be able to justify why I put 1,800 rather than 1,790. So that was just a side note.
Johnny, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Johnny, I have a question in regards to that. Because I had an issue that, which one takes precedence? I had one property that the builder had 1 square footage, and it was the same in the tax records. And then when the appraiser went out there, it fell short. And the appraisal was based off that square footage, which was less, which obviously resulted in a lower appraisal value and and all that stuff. So why did that take precedence over the builders and the tax records?
Because the appraiser is the
The appraiser is
I have a question in regards to appraisers, especially right now since there's drive-by appraisal. Can we still use that as essentially supporting evidence of square footage if they do a drive-by appraisal?
Possibly, but what I'm going to ask you to do with the appraisal question, will you write that down for me, and I'll answer that at the end of this. Okay. I just wanted to make that as a note because on this one it did show up like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is where I'm going to come and get that information from in order to use it as comparables for grabbing the comparables. So what I did here is I went into the MLS and I went and I grabbed all of the properties in Bella Vista because this property is located, where is it? Over here in Bella Vista, right? So that's where I am. We pulled those properties and I ran a search, and this is what I came up with. And I'm going to use my old numbers here just because of the fact that I did this a couple of months ago. So here, one of the things that we want to point out with the seller, and this is going through our process of describing, right now we're going to do solds. I do want to point out to that seller, all right here I pulled all of the homes that have sold in your neighborhood over the last 6 months. Or 4 months, whatever it is that you pulled. In this case, I believe it was 6 months. And what I did was I sorted it by square footage. So I have the smallest square footage on the top and the largest square footage on the bottom, okay? There's a big spread here between the smallest home and the largest home. One of the things that I want to point out to the seller at this point is I want to point out to them, so I want you to take a look at this. Do you see this sold price per square foot? That is determining of how much this home sold for per square foot. If you look at that from the smallest home going all the way to the biggest home, Mr. Seller, what can you tell me about that price per square foot? And what do y'all see?
It goes down.
It goes down, right? So I want them to say that. And part of the conversation is asking questions. So I want them to say, well, it gets smaller as we get larger, right? Because if they have one of the larger homes, and some of them will be looking at price per square foot, they may be looking at these houses that sold 115 and 128 per square foot, where the houses near them are selling for, in this case, 84, and then 90 and 115. So it ranges quite a bit there, right? So I just want them to notice how, as the homes get bigger, the price per square foot gets smaller. So that's just something I want them to tell me that they see, okay? And again, why we do this, and I didn't say this at the beginning, is we're trying to lead that seller down a road of discovery, of self-discovery as to what their house is going to sell for. And it's more than just a CMA. It has to do with all these things that we're talking about. So right now they may have just had an aha moment saying, oh, well, price per square foot, that makes sense, right? Now, the other thing on this report that I want to point out is over here. Hang on, is over here is that houses don't necessarily sell for what they listed at. So this is the original list price. This is the list price when it sold, and this is what it sold at. So this is the actual sales price over here, okay? As we can see, this one sold almost right on par, and it sold within 11 days. This one sold pretty close in 12 days, right? So I want to know this information before I go in. And then down here, this one sold, but they're giving seller concessions, right? So this is the seller concessions over here. Now, if we look at these that took a longer to sold, they started out at 265, lowered $5,000 and sold a little bit less. That one took quite a while. Some of these started out higher. Here, this one started at 250, actually went up to cover those closing costs. So that we just want to get them ready for that. Some people are going to be asking for closing costs. Okay.
Johnny?
This neighborhood seems to be selling pretty good. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain, when sellers are looking at that price per square foot and they see that as their house gets bigger, the price per square foot gets lower, and they say, well, why is that? Because some of our newer agents may not know that.
Okay. So as the house gets bigger, the price per square foot gets smaller. If you look up here, one of the reasons, and these sold for a lot more, if these are one-story homes versus two-story homes. Okay. When we look at one-story versus two-story, it's much more expensive to build a one-story home when it comes to the amount of square foot than a two-story, because foundations are very expensive. So the same square footage right here, this house is spread out over a larger footprint than this house. That foundation is going to be much more expensive, because if you think about it, the concrete and the planning for the foundation is more expensive than adding 2x4s and going up. Okay. That's one reason. The other reason is just as homes get bigger, they get smaller. And I'm having a brain fart. Can you help me there, Kim?
Well, I mean, you just said it. It's a cost of, systems versus 2x4s. So, all the additional electrical and things like that, it's cheaper on a two-story because you've got that smaller footprint, but they all have the same systems in them. So your single story has, all the same plumbing and air conditioning and electrical, and it's not as expensive to just run more pipe and run more wire, but they all have the same systems. And so the systems is really the biggest driving cost on the foundation, things like that. And then the roof on a single story is typically bigger as well.
Yeah, true that.
And also you need more land for a single story.
All right. So it could be land cost.
Takes up more land.
All right, so those are reasons. So if you get that question, it basically has to do with the footprint of the house, the foundation, and more roof. Okay, 2x4s are cheap. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Ben, thanks for pointing that out. All right, so I just want to make sure and point that out. And on this report, and I do have this in Back Agent where you guys can go and see how to run this report. I need this. Does that thing keep dropping down? The 1/4? So
I
if
see
you look up at the top, these are the headings that you need: the MLS, the status. I should have downloaded this. I didn't download it, and the thing keeps popping up. And here are some keys that you're going to need: is the number of bedrooms that the property has, if it's a 1-story or a 2-story, what the square footage is, when it was built, if it has a garage, right? These are the main amenities that we're looking at. If it has a swimming pool, because a swimming pool is going to mess with the price per square foot, because a pool typically is going to sell for more per square foot than a house without a swimming pool. So if our house does not have a pool, we probably wouldn't use this one as a comparable. We also want to look at the lot description. A house that backs up on a green belt typically is going to sell for more than a house that doesn't, depending on the green belt and other circumstances, but typically that is true. And then we want the closing date, the original list price, the current list price when it sold and what it actually sold out, and if there were any amenities. So when I have this report in front of them and I'm talking to them about this report, days on market are going to be important, and seller contribution is going to be important. In a hot market where it's a seller's market, there's going to be less seller concessions. In a market in which is a buyer's market, there's going to be a lot of seller's concessions. And seller concessions is the seller paying for the buyer's closing costs and prepaids. I like to have this on there, and I like to just point out, oh, look here, this person paid $4,500 of the buyer's closing cost. This person paid $3,000. And what's going to happen is that seller might be thinking, I'm not going to pay for any of the buyer's closing costs because I'm not going to do that. And they tell me that, and I'm like, that's cool. You don't have to. I'm still going to point out that somebody is, because I want that little nugget to get in their mind that in some cases with some buyers, that it's okay to pay for some of the buyer's closing cost. Now, again, I'm still working for the seller. I'm going to try and get them the best deal I can. But in certain circumstances, it's a good idea, or it's smart, or it's prudent part of the negotiations to pay for some of the buyer's closing cost. I don't want to get in the way of them, and I also don't want the seller to get in the way of themselves. Now, if they're adamant about it, it's ultimately their decision. But I just want to put that nugget in their head because, again, we're taking them down this path of self-discovery. So they're saying no right now, but they see over here that it does happen. That will let that barrier down a little bit and open them up to, yeah, well, maybe I might pay for some of the buyer's closing cost. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? All right. So now, based on our numbers here, now, do y'all have any questions about this report before I get into the numbers again? So based on our numbers, our range was 1620 to 1980. Where am I? So if I use that as the number, then 1620 is the low end. So that means this one here on Palatine Hill is going to be towards the low end. The high end was up to 1980. So that would only give me 2 comps. So what I would do in this case is I probably would stretch this out to encompass these 4 comps right here. Right? I am going to go outside of my 10%, but that 10% is a guide, not necessarily a rule. I am going to need a couple of more comps to compare to. So that's what I would do right there. Right? I can't go down to 1295. That is way too small. And this one right here is actually a 1-story. So I actually can't even use that one as a comp because it's a 1-story. My home is a 2-story. So that's going to leave me with these 3 right here. And if we look over here, notice how that price per square foot drops quite a bit. So if those are the ones that I'm going to compare to, and these are the solds, these are the ones that we're going to go in and we're going to look. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask the seller, you know, how does your home compare to this home? And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go through the MLS and we're going to look at each of those properties. Okay. So any questions before we go to the next step on this report or why we chose these right here?
No.
All right. So the first thing that we would have to do is we would have to take a look at our subject property. If it's been listed in the MLS before, I'll go in there and look. If not, then my first look at that property is going to be when I take a tour of the house with the seller. And that happens a lot of times. Before you go, you should be asking questions. So there's a pre-questionnaire. I don't have it up right now, but there's a questionnaire that before I come out, Mr. Seller, let me ask you some questions about your property. And that's where I can ask them, what is the best feature of your property? What is your kitchen like? Is it original? Have you done any major upgrades to the property? What does your landscaping look like? I might even drive by the house and get a picture of the front of the house before I go and have that printed out as part of my CMA. Okay. But I want to ask them those questions. Have they upgraded the kitchen? Have they upgraded the master bathroom? Have they changed flooring? Right? I want to ask those questions. What type of flooring do you have? Is there a covered patio? So there's a questionnaire where I would ask them those things, and those are going to help me get ready for my appointment, because before I go to the seller, I'm doing all this myself. I'm looking through all of the comparables. I'm looking at the photos, and I'm coming up with an idea of what I believe is true about this property. So let's go through and let's look at this property. And as an exercise, What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to write down the good features about this home as we go through it and the features that could use improvement, if you will, right? So as we go through this, right? So as we look at the front of the house, it's got a big 2-car garage. It's got a small covered front porch, trees growing. So the front looks pretty typical, okay? We go inside. This looks like the master bedroom. It looks pretty big. It has carpet. Carpet looks in good shape. It looks like it's been freshly painted. Nice ceiling fan. All right, so the master bedroom looks pretty good. Here is the living area. Now, what can you tell me about this photo, just as a side note?
Virtually staged.
Virtual stage.
It is virtually staged, okay? So one of the things about this virtually staged is they put a virtual rug in here and it's covering the carpet. Right, so just keep that in mind. I may or may not put that. If the carpet's in really bad shape, I probably don't want to cover it up. I might still virtually stage it with some other things. So just keep that in mind. So as we're looking here, we can tell that this kitchen opens up into the living area. It looks pretty decent, looks pretty good. It's got nice open windows along the back. Okay, so it's an open kitchen, open floor plan. So I'm going to write that down, open floor plan. This looks like the dining area. It looks a little tight there. Would y'all think that that looks a little tight?
Yes.
Okay, now you might be tempted to virtually stage this and make the table smaller. Be careful. I might have put a table with 4 chairs rather than 6. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now here's the backyard. Now the backyard has new fencing. It looks to be a pretty big. It's got 2 nice trees. And it's got a little sitting area out here. Now, I think that's great that they staged that because now a buyer can actually see themselves sitting out here and using this space. Without that, they might not be able to visualize that. So the backyard, I would say it's pretty decent. It's got some nice trees. All right, we're back to the living area. And one thing I like that she did here is, well, I would have included that one. Your first 4 photos are the most important. So you want really good photos in the first 4, because out online on Zillow and Trulia and all that, a lot of times they will feature the first 4 photos. So just something else to keep in mind. Now here, the living area, again, fairly big. It looks like you can fit some pretty big couches in here. So it's a good sized living area. Better picture of the kitchen. There's plenty of counter space in the kitchen. The cabinets look like they're not the bottom of the shelf, but they've got raised panels on them. They look pretty decent. The kitchen is in pretty good shape. It's got an island in it and it's got an eat-in area. So I might write that down about the kitchen, island and eat-in kitchen, as well as a dining room. Is there anything else that y'all see that we would need to add to any of this? I don't know if this is the master or not. That looks like one of the secondary bedrooms. The secondary bedroom looks pretty spacious. No, that is the master. Master goes in here.
It looks like they did virtual staging after they moved.
Yeah.
I would say that smooth ceilings is definitely a bonus. A lot of people, even in 2006, you were still seeing some popcorn.
Okay. Right. So the texture and stuff looks pretty nice, pretty modern. We get into the master. It's got a double vanity, separate tower and shub. So I might put that in there about the master, separate tower and shub. Shub?
Yep, that's what I put in. Tower and shubs.
Thank you.
Tower and shove.
It's got a laundry room. I don't know if it's upstairs or downstairs, but it's got a nice laundry room. This is one of the secondary bathrooms. That looks like it's the half bath. Another secondary bedroom, pretty big. Actually, that's
the game room.
Bedroom? That's the game room. So this one does have a game room. Good to note that it has a game room upstairs. Pretty spacious. Here's the secondary bathroom with 1 vanity. All right. Pretty basic, nothing extraordinary there, but it is nice and clean and painted, right? So it looks in good shape. Another secondary bedroom. This one's a little bit smaller. And I'm assuming this is another bedroom that they used as an office. So the secondary bedrooms are not huge. They're a decent size. And again, the backyard is huge. Nice features. There's got a small covered patio here. Or a small patio, covered patio. Anything else that we might point out on that house? All right, so I want to, if I have access to pictures and stuff, I just want to make notes for myself. And when I go to the listing appointment, I'm going to have all my notes. I'm going to give a packet over to the seller, and it's going to have the printouts of the comparables and everything, and the full printouts, these of the comparables. And we're going, as we do this next step, we're going to ask the seller to make notes themselves on how their house compares to the houses that we're going to go through. So the houses that we're going to compare this to are going to be 843 Trilby. What's the next one? 13911 Tremonto Hill.
Yes.
And then 14018 Belladonna.
Yes.
All right, so as part of this exercise, again, as we go through this, I want you to write your notes, and I'm going to be asking you the question, you know, how does your home, or how does this feature compare to your home? And you pretend like you're the home seller and you write down what you believe is true about that. So we're going to go into First Trilby 1385879. So this is 843 Trilby. Hang on one second.
Johnny, was the master on yours up or down?
I don't know.
Okay.
What is mine?
Tremonto
Great.
Hill.
All right, there it is. Yeah, we didn't look at all the details of it, so. Master, you see it? Upstairs. Right here it says master upstairs. Three sides masonry, 2 living areas. So that 2 living areas, that probably means in this case, the upstairs game room. That's what they're saying there. All right, let's go back over here. So this is Trilby. Trilby is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. It's KB, so that is a different builder than Pacific Heights, but I believe they're fairly comparable to one another. This one is a little bit newer than ours, and it's a little bit bigger than ours, right? By about 120 square feet. As I'm looking through here, it says it's extremely well kept. Anything else y'all see pointing out on here? Master is upstairs as well. So let's go through the photos. All right, so it's got a nice entry. Let's take a step back. Fairly comparable to ours. This one has, looks like it has more brick on it and such. The yard, well manicured. So how do you think the yard of ours compares to this one on Trilby? Any feedback?
Did you flash back to Julie? Or to the other one? No, the one that we're trying to sell.
The one that what? This is Trilby.
Tremonto Hill, front picture.
Okay.
All right, so how it compares to Tremonto Hill, this is Tremonto Hill.
They're similar.
I think they're fairly similar. Right. So if I'm asking the seller, so Mr. Seller, how do you think your the front of your house compares to this one?
Oh, the seller's going to say mine has more curb appeal.
Right? And I might say, you know what? Yeah, it looks pretty nice. Yours it looks fairly similar, but yours is very well kept. Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm not arguing with them right now. We're just trying to get some feedback from them, because even what I have found and some things in talking to Lucy about this yesterday, sometimes sellers won't tell you how they honestly feel because they feel like they're in competition with you sometimes. So again, we're just having a conversation with them.
True.
Right. So this is the entrance to the property here. This is the living area. So I might say, oh, look, point out this one has a nice ceiling fan. It's got this nice ceramic floor and it doesn't have carpet. You know, Mr. Seller, you know, how do you think this living area compares to yours? What do y'all think about that? Living area, how does that compare?
It appears to be more open, probably because they have the couch up against the wall,
Yeah.
the window rather. And also, I notice a lot of people prefer homes without carpeting. Me, that's not me. I have to have carpeting in my house. But a lot of people are looking for homes without carpeting.
Yeah, the vast majority of people would rather not have
So
carpet.
that's
But there's other people, and I'm indifferent. Actually, not. But so this one has a ceramic tile throughout, which is pretty low maintenance. So, Mr. Seller, how do you think your living area in this compares to, and the openness compares to yours? And we just want to get feedback, and we're going to write that down, whatever it is that they say, and we're going to continue to do this. Right? Here's just another angle of it, how open it is. And, you know, something that Hussein pointed out is they moved it to the side to make it look more open here. All right, this is the view from the kitchen. So there's actually a lot of empty space here. This probably could have been staged a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they don't have a eating kitchen table or anything.
Yeah, they
That's why it
don't.
looks
Yeah,
pretty big.
that's what would go here, right? The table and
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and sometimes buyers will look at that and they'll think, wow, that's a lot of empty space. And staging has a lot to do with helping the buyer to visualize themselves there. So as we get into the kitchen here, is that granite or not granite?
It's hard to tell. I've seen the upgraded, what is it called?
Upgraded laminate.
Yeah, and it looks
Yeah.
just like granite. So you touch it, you're like, they got me for the okie doke.
So I'm having to go back over here to see, and it doesn't say anything about granite.
No.
Yeah, so that's just it's an awesome photo. Somebody might think that that's granite when it's not. You know, more power to them, right? So it overlooks into the living area. It's pretty nice. The cabinets, slight upgrade over ours, but Mr. Seller, what do you think about this? And how does this kitchen compare to ours? Kim, Hussein, anybody?
Well, this
I
is like
think-
a,
Similar. This is a
This
galley
is-
kitchen.
go ahead,
They
Kim.
have a better layout.
yeah, I was
But
going to say.
Yeah. So you're right. This is kind of a galley, and a galley is a kitchen is just with a small space in between the two cabinets. That's called a galley kitchen. The kitchen for Termonto Hill was a bit more open right here. So that's a little bit more open, and it has the island, a little bit more counter space than the one we're comparing to. So the seller might say, you know, that one's good. Yeah, this one, you know, it has a little bit nicer cabinets and stuff. It looks into the living area. So pretty comparable. Well, I think mine's more open. Yeah, yours is more open. Right. And that's just another view of it there. So I'm going to speed through some of these here. Now, here is the secondary bathroom, you know, not a lot of emphasis here, but this one does look a little bit better, I think. And it's got better cabinets. It's been upgraded a little bit.
Mhm.
And again, we'll ask the seller. Here's the game room. Probably should have taken this out of the game room, but fairly comparable to ours with the game room. Is this the master bedroom? Yeah, this has to be the master bedroom. You know, not a whole lot there to compare, but let's go into the kitchen.
Bathroom.
The master bathroom, how does this compare? A little bit upgraded again on the cabinets here. So this had a little bit upgrade. And again, the question is, how does yours compare to this one? And they might say it's pretty similar. So just going through this, secondary bedrooms. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on secondary bedrooms. Let's go to the backyard. So how does this backyard compare to the seller's backyard?
This is a downgrade.
I believe so, right? It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't have a covered patio.
Doesn't have the covered patio. They did do this. That's a slight upgrade over nothing, But there's also no trees or any landscaping right here. So I do think from that aspect,
The other one had some added privacy.
yeah, it had some
With the
privacy and it had
trees and shrubs.
some trees and shrubs. It just looked a little better. The gate's a little bit nicer. So overall, let me ask you guys this. How would our comparable add up to our subject property?
It's close enough.
I think it's
they're pretty similar.
pretty similar, right? I might give ours a little bit of a bonus because the kitchen is a little bit more open and the backyard is a grade better.
Right.
But this one has ceramic tile, right? So
Exactly.
all things being equal, it's fairly similar. This one ended up selling at 115 a foot, right? And it's a little bit bigger. So I'll keep that in mind. And we're going to do the same thing with the other ones. We're going to go through the next ones a lot quicker. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time, but I just want to point it out. So this one, 138,6970. And again, this is what you would do step by step with the seller, is just go through these one by one with the comparables and asking them what they think. And again, what you're going to find is as you do this, you're going to get more honest answers from them the more you go down, okay, and look at it. When we look at this one here, now how does the front compare to ours? Right, so let me ask y'all that question again. How does this front compare to ours?
I think it might be a little bit better with that stone on the house.
Yeah, this one has stone. It's got this nice feature here in the front. So I think this house, and this was Standard Pacific, even though it's got the nice porch, I think this one probably looks a little bit better, right? And we're going to go through each one. You know, how does your kitchen look at the hardwood floors? And I might point that out. Wow, they put some nice hardwood floors in here. That's pretty nice. Is there a better? There's the living area. So here's the living area. It's pretty open. It's got the big windows. You know, how does it compare? This one has the nice lights. Look, they've even got crown molding up in here. And I might just point those things out. Nice designer touches. Pretty open here. And again, just ask them as you're going through this, what do you think? This one looks, I think the living area is a lot better because of the floors that they put in. That's a nice upgrade. This opens into the kitchen. Now, is that kitchen that small? Is that why? It goes back there a little bit, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So I just want to come back and look at the kitchen again. Yeah, so the kitchen does go back behind this wall and then it opens up over here. So when we ask how these cabinets are a little bit of an upgrade over ours as well, and it's got crown molding in here too. It's got the recessed lighting. So far I'm giving this one a little bit better grade. Is that an island?
Probably it's high ceilings because the cabinets appear to be 42 inch and 42 inch need to be at least
So you
9
think
foot higher.
they're taller?
Yeah.
Just the cabinets are. Okay. And point that out to them. And there's a lot of designer touches in this house, it looks like. This looks like is this the dining area? So there's an eating kitchen and a dining area? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And it did have granite countertops.
That is granite? All right.
Yeah, because it has a undermount sink, and typically an undermount sink is used for granite.
True that. So that would be a big upgrade as well. Right, so as we look at this one, the secondary bedrooms, they're all right. They've got hardwood floors again, or ceramic tile, whatever that is. I'd have to research and make sure I use the right verbiage. In the game room upstairs, which is another plus. This is the master bathroom, not as big, right? Only one sink instead of double vanity here, so not quite as nice. Oh, they did paint the garage. I mean, it is the garage, but that does add a little bit to it. And it's got this huge back patio over here. It's got a nice tree overhanging it.
But it's not covered.
It's not covered, but it does have the tree for shade, so that'll add for something. Backyard's well manicured and such. So I think that's fairly comparable to ours. I think I would still give ours a little bit slightly higher grade because it's covered and it's got the trees. Right? Now this one was listed at 225, sold for 227, and sold at $112 a foot. Overall, I think that one might be a little bit better than ours, right? So again, you're going to do that for each one. And at the end, and what we're trying to do is just get that seller to see what has sold on the market and how their house compared to those. Because remember, when we talk about these, houses sell in a range. And we're just saying, where would yours sell in this range? Well, right now, if those two houses were in this range, ours is probably somewhere in here is where I would think, because that last one was a little bit better. The other one was pretty close. Would that be y'all's assessment? Do y'all have a different assessment of that?
No, I agree.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at the next aspect. So you're going to do that with the comparables. You might do that with 2 or 3 comparables. You might do that with 4 or 5. I really wouldn't do more than 4 or 5 because the seller's eyes are going to start glazing over at some point. Like some of y'all right now, your eyes might be glazing over a little bit, right? So I wouldn't do too many, but I would choose the ones that are closest to ours. And the next thing that we would do is we would go in and we would want to look at the homes that are on the market, right? So those are the solds. And what I typically do is we'll start out here looking at the overall market, and then I'll choose the ones that are closest to ours and narrow it down. Like I should have taken this one out because it was a 1-story, and I should have taken this one out because it was a pool, and that would have left me with 5. And then I would have taken these 2 out because they were just too big at 2,400 square feet, right? And that would have left me with the 3 that we looked at. So I'm going to go from the overall one, and we're going to narrow it down to the ones that are closest to theirs in square footage. All right, which is what I did there. And then we're going to look at the homes that are on the market that theirs is going to compare to. Y'all following that?
Yes.
Yes.
So here, the 2 that I found that were closest to theirs were these 2 homes here. One was 100 square foot smaller, and the other one was the same size. Okay. Both of those were listed at 200,000. So then what we're going to do is say, all right, so we know that we're going to be going back to the solds. We're going to be, and we're going to determine based on price per square foot, we're probably going to be in this range, right? Or I would ask the seller, where do you think you're going to be price-wise as price per square foot as compared to these other homes? And, you know, if we were at 115 and 112 with those 2, and the 112 one was a little bit better, then we're probably going to be close to, since ours is a little bit smaller, around 110 to 112. Does that make sense to you guys? And where would we be at 112? This one doesn't have it. I would want to use a report that has price per square foot in here as well, which I don't have there.
Well, you could put that in when you do your search.
Yeah, you
Price.
can. And I would have brought up this report, but I would have added active or currently listed price per square foot, and I would have that one here. I printed out the wrong report here. So if I used 110 per square foot times 1,800, that would put me at 198. If I used 112 times 1,800, that would put me at 201, 206. Right. So with all things being equal, that, what did I say? 198 to 202, something like that. And then with that being said, coming in here with this direct competition, these are priced right about where I think ours should be priced at. So then with all that being said, once I look at these to see how it compares, I would go back to what we did yesterday and looked at the absorption rate and how many houses are selling per month in this neighborhood. And if only one house was selling per month and we had these 2 plus ours, that would mean it would take 3 months to sell all the inventory. So I would come back to that at some point, especially when we get in here and we compare and we start getting into price. how many houses are selling per month? And that would be an important number that I would want to go back and look at. If 3 houses are selling per month and we put ours on the market, then I might not need to price it as competitively. But if only 1 house was selling per month and they wanted to sell within the next 30 days, I would have to be more strong on the pricing. Are y'all following that thought process there?
Yeah.
So let's go in and let's look at the most comparable one here. Let's just look at this one, 1424424. Is that Trilby? Caprese, okay. So this one looks like the same floor plan at Standard Pacific. So this is the exact same floor plan as theirs. This one's at 17.9 and it's listed at 199,999. Just this should be priced at 200. Okay, because anybody searching from 200 to 225 would not see this house.
Right.
So this one actually sold, and it actually sold for 204. So it sold for a little bit more than what it was listed at, and it ended up being on the market for 61 days. At
Right,
the
but they
time
gave
that-
6,500 in closing costs.
yeah, they raised the price and gave 6,500 in closing costs. At the time that we did this, this was still on the market, right? So what did it had just come on the market at this time, which was November, and it was 2 days on the market when we did this. It ended up selling for more, but it took 2 months for it to sell, right? So just keep that in mind. So 1790, same floor plan. We're going to go in, and now when we look at this one, this is what's currently on the market. This one is probably the closest comparable to ours. So this is the one that I would be concentrating on, because we know our price range is going to be right around 200, give or take. But where we enter the market, and when we look at comparables, what we're trying to do is guide the seller down to where we should enter the market. We know the range we need to be in, but where do we enter? You all following that concept?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look through this. How do y'all think this front compares to ours? This one has a little bit nicer landscaping up here. They staged it a little bit. It's got a nice tree here. So kind of comparable. This one I would give a little bit bonus because it's got a little bit extra features with the stone in the front as well. So, but they should have cleaned the driveway, one thing. All right, so there's shade on the front of the house. It's got a pink door. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's got carpet. Ours had carpet. This one has a little bit nicer features. This one has a little bit nicer upgrades in it. It's got some chair railing in here. So Mr. Seller, how do you think yours compares to this one that's currently on the market? Right? Oh, this one's got hardwood floor that goes into the back. You know, what do you think about this entrance as comparable to yours? And here we are in the living area. Man, they put that wood all throughout here. They got that staged pretty nicely. They got the arcs and the crown molding going on. Nice ceiling fan. Same big windows that yours has, so it opens out onto the back. You know, from here, you know, how do you think this compares? This one has a fireplace. That I don't think ours had a fireplace, did it?
I don't
No.
think that one
No.
is real.
And this one has nice stone. So what'd you say? You don't think this one is real?
No, I think that's a take it with you fireplace.
Oh, well, that would be good to know, because I'm looking at that going, you know what, I think it is, because I don't see a chimney here either. So that's just a personal property.
Electric.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now,
Panel.
looking in here, it looks like that kitchen has a little bit nicer amenities to it in here. It's got this stone backsplash. Cabinets are about the same. It's got some nice upgrades that they did with this house as compared to ours. Do y'all see anything in here? It's got the wood floors all through here, which is a nice feature.
Didn't ours have a small island?
Ours did have oh, there's a big difference right there. Wait a minute. I'm losing. Yeah, so this does open up over here, but this one doesn't have the island. Ours does.
And your fireplace is plugged in, Johnny.
Shh. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
So this one doesn't have the island. So that was a feature that ours had that this one doesn't. So this one is more open, but it's less counter space. But overall, I think this one looks a little bit nicer. It's got more features and stuff to it.
Yeah.
And that could count. Is that an island? I think it's just a different type of island.
It's a piece of furniture. It's a table. It's not attached.
Okay.
But it still serves the same purpose, and it takes less space, so they have a more open feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm the buyer, I might ask for that.
If I'm the seller, I'm going to leave it behind.
Oh, well, good. See, we're already negotiating here, Kim, and it's not our listing, so we're good. Here's the game room upstairs. It's got carpet just like ours, freshly painted, fairly comparable to ours. Did our master bedroom have Coford ceilings like this?
I don't believe so.
I don't think it did, so that's a little bit of an upgrade there. And this bathroom has been upgraded. Again, it's got the wood floors, it's got the nicer tile work.
Mm-hmm.
But is this only one vanity?
Yes.
So ours had 2 sinks. This one only has 1, right? Secondary bedroom, fairly comparable to ours, staged really nice.
Yes.
This one is blue. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but it's fairly comparable. The only difference is, looks like the paint, this one was staged a little bit more. It's a lot of stuff. Oh, that's a mirror. I'm like, all right, never mind. Now, looking at the back patio, it's got a trellis, but it's not covered. The trees don't nearly look as nice as ours, but it does have trees, and the grass needs some work. So I would say ours, backyard-wise, was better than this backyard.
Definitely. And that trellis looks like a Home Depot thing that the canvas wore off of.
True that. So again, I would give ours better. It's got a nice tree over here. That was more like a Craig myrtle. And they probably should have cleaned this up a little bit. It looks really nice. This might be a bad picture, but if this was taken with more lighting, it might have looked a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But still overall pretty decent, but our backyard I think would be a little bit better. Now overall, and I'm not going to go through the other one, just this one. So if I'm asking the seller at this point, so this is, our closest comparable, we went through this, and as we took notes, you indicated that this kitchen was probably a little bit better than yours, and you indicated the flooring was a little bit better. So if this house is listed at $199.9, and we know that the range we were going to go in at was between $190.95 and $205, or whatever that number is that we came up with, where do you think we should enter the market if this is going to be our competition and only one house is going to sell in the next 30 days? So something along those lines to get them to indicate where they want to sell at, because again, we're taking them down this path of pricing, and they might have had in their mind 210, but now they see this, and we know our price range was lower than what they thought already, and now this house overall is better than their house, and if they want to sell within the next 30 days, they've got to beat this one out in competition.
Mm-hmm.
So do y'all see how we got to that point? Now, going through all of this, the absorption rate and this pricing, that's going to be probably an hour-and-a-half conversation. Maybe an hour, depending on how good you are and how receptive they are and how the communication goes. But at the end of this, what our ultimate goal is we want that seller to say, looking at all of this, and I'll just use this as an example, we probably should price a little bit below this one, maybe at 198. Now, me at 198, and this is my comparable, I might go ahead and price it at 200, just so I can be at that price point where people that search from 200 and above, even though they say 198, I still might price it at 200 just because we're that close to that 200 benchmark. If they had said 195 and I would agree with them, then I probably would stay at 195 rather than pushing the 200. What are you, and Hussein and Kim, what are y'all's thoughts on that aspect of it?
I would do 195.
Yeah, that's what I would do too.
For $3,000, I would rather be the first one sold.
Yeah. I would say if the seller is being adamant, I might jump to 200 if they were at 198, but I'd
Right.
rather go to 195. What are your thoughts, Hussein?
I was going to say it depends on the seller, how fast they want to sell their home. So
Yeah. Right. And I want them to sell it quick.
some people are, and let's say greedy, but of course they're trying to make more of a profit. So,
Yeah.
But then again, if they do that, the house may sit there a little longer.
Yeah. And as we saw, the one on Monto Hill, our subject property, actually expired. They went down to 206. They probably should have gone down to 195. That one ended up expiring.
Yeah.
Now, remember, our job is to give them the options. We could tell them 195. They ultimately make the decision. But by
Right.
us going through this and us saying 195, once it goes on the market and they're not getting the showings and it's not happening the way they want, it's going to be easier to get that price reduction to come down where it should be versus if I didn't go through all of this with them and have these conversations with them. Lucy had a story where she had somebody with pink carpet, and within 4 days she got a price reduction because she had gone through a whole conversation with them. Didn't fight her. She said it was getting kind of confrontational. She backed off. But then she got feedback from an open house from 11 people who all commented on the pink carpet, and she was able to get a price reduction and get it sold. So even though, at this point, one of the things that we as agents need to understand is, even though they might not come around to where the pricing might be, even though we go through all of this at this stage, they're still listening. They're still hearing. We're still getting impressions on their mind as to where it should be. And once they don't get the action they think, it's going to be easier to get the price reduction. The best case scenario would be for them to come to the conclusion, yeah, I need to beat this one in pricing, so I need to go in at 195. Right, does that make sense to you guys?
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
So
I think Hussein's point about timing, though, is important as well, because if they feel like they've got to find another home to move into, if they're going to be a seller and a buyer, they may say, well, I want 2 months, so I do want to be at 200. I want this one to sell first. I need some time. So the timing is important as well.
it is. Now, just as a not a rebuttal, but something I might point out to them is that, I know you need 2 months. We could do a 45 or a 60-day closing if it sells quickly.
Absolutely. Or a lease back.
Right. So some other discussions that we could have with them. So any other thoughts on that process? So I know it's very difficult, and I have trouble with this when I'm going in to rush through this. I would set up the seller by saying, we're going to look at several houses. We're going to take the time to look at this because we need to come to a conclusion as to where we're going to sell. And I'll go back and point back out here. Remember, we're going to sell within a range, and it's very important for us to determine where we're going to be at in that range. Okay. So I can come back to this. And if they have any hot points, I can come back to that. If they say, man, I don't want to be showing my house, all the time, and I'd rather sell it quickly. If that's a hot point, then I say, well, you want 205, but this other house is likely going to sell before yours. So we need to price. I would suggest that we price a little more aggressively so that we can get ours sold. Does that make sense? And go through that conversation with them.
A lot of times when you're asking the questions about their home, like what their flooring is, if they have, crown molding, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times I'll ask them to just snap a few pictures and send them to me as well.
Oh yeah. Great idea. Right. Can you snap a few photos and send those to me?
Yeah. They don't have to be
I've been doing
professional.
this a while and I've never asked that.
Oh, well, I mean, just, and I tell them they don't have to be professional. I just want to see what's there. It'll help me, when we get to this appointment.
Yeah. And something else that I've done before, and I know you guys have probably done this, is those houses that were on the market. If I'm getting a lot of pushback and they're like, well, I think mine's way better, I'll set up previews of the houses that we're comparing against. And so that way we set up a preview. I call the agent, hey, we're just going to preview it. Your seller doesn't have to go in and do a lot of stuff to be ready. We're just going to go preview the property. And I'll give you some good feedback on it. And then I take them over there and we preview the property, and I give them a sheet, right? How does your house compare to this one? And we'll do it as we walk through. And if I know that the competition is a lot better, that's a big eye opener for sellers sometimes. So don't be afraid to take sellers on a preview of other houses that are listed in the market.
Yeah. A lot of times you'll get that pushback, like, well, everything is gray. I just, and why does everybody have to have this new laminate flooring? I mean, what's wrong with carpet? And at that point, you just have to explain to them, I understand this isn't what you like, but let's look at what's selling and see what the trend is. And this is telling us what everybody else likes. Yeah. So, we all have different taste. So sometimes they have to not necessarily see it as better, but as what everybody else wants.
Yeah, that's true, right? So it might not necessarily be better, but the trend is this is preferred.
Right.
So two houses, one with carpet, one with the laminate flooring, priced pretty similar to one another. Well, the trend is telling us that the one with the laminate flooring is going to sell first,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a great point there. And if you guys are ever wondering where the trends are, go visit a bunch of new home builders in that price point and see what buyers are actually putting in their houses. That's what the model homes would look like. That's a great way to look and see what's going on in the market, or one of the ways to see what's going on in the market. Okay. So with that being said, do you guys have any questions about this part of the process of comparing the home's condition to the recently sold and comparing the home's condition to the currently on the market?
9.
Right. So again, this gives us kind of the range we're going to sell in. This is going to point us in the right direction of where we enter the market. Now, then what we're going to go through tomorrow is we're going to go through home preparation and getting the house ready for the market. And so I'll have a little bit more information about that. And that's a whole other conversation, because in this scenario here, if they wanted more, could they do some things to their house in order to elicit more?
Well, yeah.
Right? I mean, they can. They could fix the landscaping in the front.
They can, but will they? That's the thing.
Yeah, right.
But you want to.
But that's a discussion that we're going to have. There are certain things they should do. And we'll have that discussion tomorrow on little things that they can do versus if they want to put money into it. In this house, they're probably not going to pull the carpet out and put wood flooring, right? No. But if there was a big enough gap there where maybe they would, because maybe their carpet needed to be replaced, well, maybe they would spend $1,000 more to get the laminate wood flooring in that case, right? But if their carpet's in good shape, that's not going to happen. But if it needed painting, that might be something that would happen. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow, because one of the things that I truly believe, if you're going out to a house and you're doing the listing appointment today and the house is going on the market tomorrow, we're probably doing it wrong, because there are going to be some steps in there to get that house prepared and ready for the market. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And then the next day, we'll go through the marketing aspect of it. All right. So I want to open this up. Do you guys have any questions or anything for me, or even for Hussein or Kim?
I actually have one listing I actually interviewed for and one I didn't. Both houses haven't sold, but I told them about the painting of the house. And I know this is a discussion we'll bring in tomorrow. This red color seems to be very popular with some people, and then majority of people don't like it. If you're painting your house red, this like blood red, it's not going to sell, and these people won't listen. So subsequently, the house is on the market.
Is the blood red an accent wall, or is it the interior?
It's an accent wall. Well, one of the houses has it as an accent wall, and one of the homes has it as the whole room, and it's the game room. Both are the game room.
Wow. Yeah. Accent wall, maybe the whole room. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to overcome, because the people that like that color red, they really, really like it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess I've had one of my listings. My very first listing had the red room, I called it, and I said, "Hey, paint your house," because throughout the house it had multicolors, and I said, "Hey, paint your house," and all the feedback was saying, "Paint your house. We love the house. Can't look past the paint." And
let me tell you what happened in this case here. We had a house that it needed painting and they wouldn't do it, but finally they painted it themselves or hired somebody, whatever it is. And within 2 days, once we updated the photos, within 2 days it went under contract.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a great story to sell. People will hear that more than they will facts. If you ever heard that saying, facts tell, stories sell.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great story that you can use. And you other agents that are listening to this, steal stories from other agents.
Our stories are your stories.
Do what?
Said our stories are your stories.
Anybody's. You could steal Molly's or steal Hussein's that he just used. An agent in our office had this happen, and I saw it, and they painted it, and then in 2 days it sold. I was, I was a doubter. I'm not a doubter anymore. The house has to be prepared and ready to go. Right. So that would be a story that you could steal from somebody else. Don't be afraid to do that. All right. Lori, I want to ask you, do you have anything to add or any input you would like to put in?
Lori.
No, it's all good information.
Lori.
No, it's,
Lori.
I'm here.
Lori. Lori.
No, it's all good.
Bueller.
It gives me some things to cover that I don't do, just to help justify, the pricing a little better, and it gives a better understanding of where the price comes from. And I think Kim brought up some good points in the snapshots before, because I've had that happen to me where, I run comps and it's one price, and then I walk in the door and the condition of that house was atrocious. So, kind of had to redo everything. And yeah, I'm going to hijack all your stories.
What's mine is yours, darling.
That's right. Hey, they don't know.
I charge a fee. I charge a fee.
Well, I just won't tell you then.
All right. So again, the whole process here, this process is to get to good pricing. And if you do it this way, if you walk in and it's bad condition, if you do it this way, they're going to come to the conclusion that it needs to be at the lower end of that price range. All right. Well, if nothing else, guys, we're going to let you go. I don't have the training up tomorrow yet, but I am going to put that, and then I'll announce it if you guys want to come back tomorrow, and we'll talk about things that we can do to prepare that home for sale. And some of y'all might not have heard some of the things that I've talked about before. So I would love to have you guys back and get your feedback on some of this as well.
Is this going to be 9 a.m. or 11?
I think 9 a.m. Yeah, tomorrow will be 9 a.m.
Rats.
Do you know how hard it is for me to wake up? Even before this whole coronavirus, I have sleep issues. I don't sleep at night. I normally fall asleep during the morning. So
Well,
even this morning, I tried to wake up at 9 o'clock, and I woke up at 8:15. I said, okay, fine, I got a couple more minutes. Slept straight through.
oh, man. Well, Hussein, I'll text you in the morning and give you a wake-up call.
Or I might wake up and join, but I won't be listening.
All right. Well, guys, thank you again. And I'll see y'all guys in the morning at 9 o'clock. And don't forget, Inside Real Estate has those trainings going on at 11, 1, 3, and 4. So if y'all see anything y'all like and want to get on there and watch, I would encourage you to do that.
Okie doke.
All right. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks,
All right.
I'll talk to y'all
Bye,
soon.
guys. Hey, Milo.